Awesome. Yeah, Erasmus. So UCL draw was done just a few minutes ago, and we are here to do a quick reaction to the draw. I've shared some of my views on social media, so for some people they would have seen my stance on some of the issues. But I don't know how you feel because I feel like now we are talking UCL. Initially, the matches that they were playing there, they were boring matches. Now we are talking UCL, and now the men will be separated from the impersonators. And so we need to tell who do you think the men would be and who do you think the impersonators would be. So I'll just go through the draw, and then once I go through the draw, we can pick it from the least. There are some of them I don't think they are draws; they are placeholder matches, and then we can go to the draws themselves. So there's Arsenal versus Bayern Munich. There is Real Madrid versus Manchester City, which is last season. I think for the past two seasons, right, in UCL, Real Madrid, Man City have met, and here they are for the third successive season meeting again. You have PSG versus Barcelona, and then you have Atletico Madrid and Dortmund. And so let's start with Atletico Madrid Dortmund. What's your take? What are your predictions around that clash?
I mean, before I go into my predictions, I
Yeah.
must say that it's quite surprising. 2 months ago, I didn't think that you'd be sharing your football thoughts on social media, but here we
Yeah,
are.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, lots
yeah,
of
before,
people have said they are surprised I talk football at all. So
yeah. I mean, before I even move into the first game, I think I also shared what my predicted draw would be, and I was really looking forward to Arsenal drawing Bayern Munich, and I also put it out there on my Twitter. And two of the draws came to pass. The other one didn't come to pass because I knew there was going to be a Real Madrid Man City because it's not new. Like Chelsea
yeah,
was facing Real Madrid back to back, so
yeah,
we all know that they like to give Real Madrid some of the toughest tests. Um,
yeah.
but I just didn't want that because like I thought it would be good to see them in the semi-final instead,
Yeah, true.
and I thought Atletico would be a very good team to put in the way of City. So I predicted the Atletico City thing, but of course, which
The Madrid
but
will be.
that being said, I think this draw would provide for more exciting games, and I'll be starting with the Arsenal Dortmund one. In
Yeah.
my opinion, these are two teams. These are the two teams whom everyone wanted to play
Well, you meant
more.
Atletico Madrid Dortmund because
Yes.
you used Arsenal Dortmund. That's why.
Oh no, sorry, Atletico Madrid, Dortmund,
Yeah,
and these are two teams that more so, if you were to rank the strength of the teams, you would have put them in the bottom two. So
yeah,
maybe Dortmund more than Atletico because we know that Atletico can be really sketchy and can pull through. So them getting each other means we are most likely going to see a very engaging football game, a
yeah,
game that's close, and that's what we want to see. Like in the quarterfinals, you don't want to see one team blow out the other team. Um,
yeah,
I think one of the advantages that Atletico Madrid does have is their home stadium, where they've never lost in over about 15 matches in a knockout tie. So I think it's going to do a lot of magic for them. The problem is that they are playing at home first. So if Dortmund can't stand their ground, and the Signal Iduna Park in Germany is also one of the hottest grounds to compete in. So if
yeah,
Dortmund can't stand their ground, they can get through. But Dortmund is a team that is very sketchy. They don't like it when a team takes the game to them. They
yeah,
tend to rely a bit also on the counter attack. Can be a bit weak defensively if their best defenders are not on their day. So I think I tip Atletico Madrid slightly, but I think it's going to be a very good game over the two legs.
yeah. I mean, I think it would be a good game, but I think when it comes to these games, you don't just need talent, you require character, the experience within the team, and also sort of an edge, a factor around you, an aura around you that says you are good within the UCL when it comes to these tough stages. And I think if you look across both teams, Atletico Madrid definitely has that much more than Dortmund does. Also, because if you look at Diego Simeone, He has this weird way of setting his teams up in a very low block, defensively very difficult to break down, and you need to take your chances in order to beat that team. And Dortmund currently is not a team that does that. Um, you see them creating a lots of chances, missing them, messing them up, sometimes having to rely on individual brilliance to be able to take these things. And the counter attack, Atletico Madrid is not a team you are getting on that counter attack because they are equally pouncing on you on a counter attack situation. They will probably be even comfortable allowing you to have the ball as much as you want, but just make sure that you do not win any of these situations. And so I find it a little bit difficult to think that Dortmund would beat Atletico Madrid. Um, if you ask me, and I think if you ask the majority of people out there, we would have the similar call as to Atletico Madrid progressing through. But I also think that makes it for a much more interesting semi-final, whoever meets Atletico Madrid, because it would be a very difficult side to break down compared
Yeah,
to if Dortmund were to go and meet any of these big guys that were going to progress to the semi-finals, you would most likely have a sealed tie, which makes the
yeah.
semis less interesting. And so I think for the interest of the competitiveness and the quality of the UCL, it's much, much better if you have Atletico Madrid going through to the semis
I
than
agree
Dortmund.
with you, and I think by having to see the draw, we know that it's the outcome of the team PSG Barcelona who meet at Dortmund. I think if any both of
Exactly.
progress. Yeah, I do agree with
Yeah,
you. Like Dortmund doesn't have that great. Like Dortmund can be good. We saw them in the UCL final in I think 2030,
yeah,
and it was when they had sort of like the X factor, their seasons where they are balling out. But this is not
yeah,
one of those seasons. But Atletico is just known to have the DNA of fighting, the DNA of having to believe, and they give you good matches. Like over the years, we've seen their games with City, their games with Real Madrid, where they
yeah,
give you good quality. So I think the football fanatic would want to see Atletico Madrid through, even though
yeah,
they've been quite underwhelming this season.
definitely, definitely. Yeah. So next quarterfinal clash is between PSG and Barcelona. I mean, these are two teams who have a rich history, individually very, very rich history. Probably currently not at the highest levels individually in terms of their performances. Also, we've seen that probably their squad quality have reduced a little bit over the past window. And so it's like these are not teams where you go into it expecting, probably aside Kylian Mbappe of PSG, these are not teams that you go into it. Yeah, I think Barcelona also has Robert Lewandowski, but Lewandowski has not been prolific as you would want him to be, and he's not been that deadly like that. But these are not teams that you look at them 4 5 years ago and you look at the kind of quality, the depth that they have. If they were clashing 3 seasons ago, we probably have much more buzz around them than now. But these are teams that can pull individual quality. They still have the history, the structure, and the quality. And these are two coaches, Xavi, who's proven to be very tactically adept, and then Luis Enrique, who is also very experienced in the kind of coaching that he gives. And so I don't know, it's quite a tricky fixture, probably one that I'm least concerned about, but also one that I cannot definitely call who is going to go through. So for this one, I would really be interested to know your take on it.
Yeah, for me, like I think I don't know about when these matches are played, but I think this will be a very very enjoyable tie. Like
Yeah,
even the Napoli game with Barcelona was a very very enjoyable tie, end to end in both legs. So then is Barcelona gives you good games due to their style of play, but then
yeah,
also they have huge defensive frailties, which
exactly.
stems from the midfield down to the kind of defenders or the defender profiles which they have. They had to rely on a 17-year-old Kubasi
Yeah,
um,
to beat.
within the run of 16 games with Napoli, which against Kylian Mbappe and the likes, it can seem like, yeah, I understand that these guys are doing so well, but it would be a real test, especially when um you have to face the pace of Dembele, Bradley
Yeah,
Barcola,
Gonzalo
and
Ramos.
yeah, Gonzalo Ramos, and even the guy who missed the last goal, Kolomwani.
Yeah, Colombo.
So they are all very, very pacey. And Barcelona has just been known to struggle against teams that hit them on their counter attack. And
Yeah,
they've been known to be giving up a lot of balls in midfield. But I think what works for them is that they have very, very talented attackers who can squeeze something out of nothing. So I think if they are able to have a good game with good pressing and be able to position their attackers in between uh, the the lines for against PSG, then they can cause some trouble. But I don't see them making it out of this tie. The other point I wanted to make about this is this is reminiscent of, like, a couple of years ago, PSG Barcelona faced off.
yeah,
So there's a few sentiments in there in terms of
yeah.
having that revenge and things like that. So I think it will be a very huge match in that respect. But then also Luis Enrique knows Barcelona. He knows how they play.
Exactly.
And I think he is tactically brilliant in terms of just being able to respond to the opposition and stop them. PSG's troubles is not down to like lack of quality personnel or just being on the decline. It just seems they don't have a lot of harmony within the squad. The players have
That's
not
what I
played.
was about to say. They're not gelling yet as a team.
Yeah, exactly. But when you see like the game they played against Sociedad, which obviously is not a real test, but
Yeah,
it tells you that this team can turn up. And for me, the defining factor is Mbappe. People
yeah,
underestimate how much of a player that guy is. That guy is the best player in the world right now, and it's no cap. Like you watch
yeah,
his games, and he Mbappe creates chances on his own. Like when we talk
yeah,
about Haaland having two, three touches and having to score, but Haaland is dependent on chances. Mbappe creates chances on his
yeah.
own.
You
Yeah,
never start him in a game. That's the thing. You
yes,
don't get to shut him out like you do to Haaland and
no,
say, I've shut passing lanes, so Haaland is isolated. Mbappe
yeah,
drops, picks the ball, creates the chance
voila.
for himself and scores.
Yeah, and especially in games where Luis Enrique is able to utilize him in the way in which he did by like exploiting the opposition's weakness by
Yeah,
letting them drop deep and using his dribbling to uh, pass through the midfield and then find
yeah,
Mbappe free and wide. And this is a Mbappe who in half spaces. Sometimes it's not even too much. Like certain balls that some strikers will hit it straight away to hit someone and things like that. He has the confidence to pause. He has the confidence to take an extra touch, and that opens up spaces. Like you saw his goal against Sociedad, where he just like dummied, and then like he just opened up the spaces, just opened up.
yeah,
This is a guy who can create chances out of thin air, out of situations. There are things that only him can do, like his power and accuracy on the ball is crazy, especially when cutting in from the right. And I think that is where Barca's weaknesses is because like they let their fullbacks bomb forward. They don't have the best of centre backs. They don't have a DM at the moment. Christensen is the one playing DM, which means that if PSG can, and PSG has Zaire Emery and Ruiz, who are very, very, very good pressers of the ball and
yeah,
who also retain the ball very, very well. So it
yeah.
means that if you're able to steal the ball of these guys, the transition power of Dembele, Bakola, and Mbappe, I don't think Barca stands a chance.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I look at the two teams, and the thing that's driving me towards agreeing with you here, it's really about um, not just killing Mbappe, but I think PSG has a squad that individually can turn up, and it's just about if they individually turn up, are they great? They are outstanding. I think if this squad individually turns up, I'll probably pitch them against a City or a Madrid, and they'll give them a really really tough time, right? And the reason why a lot of people probably underestimate Kylian Mbappe is because of the league he's playing in. And I would
Yeah.
always say this: if Mbappe was in the EPL, we wouldn't hear the end of him week in week out because people rarely watch him in League 1. People rarely pay attention to that league. And even with that, look at his quality. Look at the fear that he puts in defenses. And he goes to France. He goes to the World Cup. He delivers, scoring a hat trick in a World Cup final. That's not a player you play with. And some of the chances he scored, they are not chances that you would say they were open goal
Yes.
chances.
Yes.
Look at that strike to equalize. Like, it was crazy. And so you look at this person, and he's able to turn up and take a game and then just say, this is my show and I'll deal with it. And I don't think Barca has the quality to stop that from happening at this point.
I mean, they
Also,
have
I don't
Yamal.
really see Barca having a defined threat. Don't get me wrong, Robert Lewandowski is a very lethal striker, but I don't think he's at his apex right now. And I don't think he would obviously be compared to the likes of Mbappe, who can create something out of nothing. Lewandowski would need the team behind him to play well for him to pick his moments, take his chances, and he would finish it off. But if you don't have the team playing well, which I think they would struggle to do if PSG sets up properly, then you are going to have Barcelona struggling a little bit. I think in the Champions League currently, Barca is not being exposed for their weaknesses. You'd see it properly in the league, but in the Champions League, it's not being exploited. If you have a team that tests them properly, they are going to lose. And just cast your mind back to last season when they faced off Manchester United in the UEFA Europa
Yeah,
League playoff. And that could clearly tell if a team tries to pressure them, mount up spaces, starts to run at them, then their entire structure, because they need time to reset themselves into their proper defensive structure. And any team that denies them that time and catches them on the transition, they are done. And PSG with their attackers, they are always doing that, catching you on the transition. And that's going to create huge problems for them.
yeah, I agree. I mean, they have a certain Lamine Yamal who's been, and he's very, very gifted, right? But I think
Yeah,
sometimes this is what we were saying in terms of the pedigree within the Champions League. Like, would he turn up? Like, he's a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid.
yeah,
Rafinha, who used to play for Leeds. And you have this catalog of players who are the ones you are depending on to turn up. I mean, let's see. I don't think you can completely write them off because it's Barcelona,
yeah,
but
because it's Barcelona, you
yeah,
can't completely write them off.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Let's come to the top two clashes. I mean, Atletico Madrid Dortmund was the lowest. Come to Barca PSG.
That's per
The
your
two,
ranking or UEFA
what?
ranking. That's per your ranking or UEFA's ranking.
I don't care whoever's ranking it is, but the reality of the situation. But let's pick the top two clashes. And first, I would go Arsenal Bayern Munich. And the reason why I'm saying this also because Arsenal is a team that has turned up really well in the EPL this season. Bayern Munich has a rich history within the EP and the Champions League, but also there's a lot of pressure on them to win something. The league already seems like it's gotten away from them, and it seems like the place where they can be assured to perform and it would mean something is the Champions League. And so, and I don't put it past Thomas Tuchel. He's done it at Chelsea. He comes, picks a team not really performing in the league, but when it comes to the Champions League, it's like he's playing with his life and his blood on the line, and he'll do everything it takes to win. And so, I'm looking at this clash, and I think Arsenal is going to struggle. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I personally think Arsenal would probably go ahead to win the English Premier League. I see them doing that. I just don't have that same feeling about them in the UCL. And it's a funny feeling. The reason is because I don't think they have a rich history there that calls on them. And the reason why the league is easier is because you see, the league is about picking your moments, winning the small matches consistently, just staying in the big games. You don't necessarily have to win the big games. Like you said, they'll probably go to the Etihad and lose, but they can win all the rest of their matches and still be fine reasonably. But the Champions League is not like that. You don't get redemption from winning a small match. And they struggled against Porto with a 41-year-old Pepe in defense, captaining, and they struggled and it took penalties. The only thing that is interesting about this clash is that Bayern's fans have a one-game ban in the Champions League, and so the home game that Arsenal would play, there will be no away fans for Bayern Munich, and so Arsenal would have the full stadium to themselves and to their fans. Even then, I do not think they are going to beat Bayern Munich to a degree that when they go back to Munich, Bayern is not going to mafia them there, right? And so for that reason, there's a factor about Arsenal that I don't think that, and the way Tuchel sets his team up, especially now that he's bringing in a lot of the experienced players. Because if you notice, when he started the season, he wasn't playing Muller, he wasn't playing Kimmich, he wasn't playing. a lot of the experienced squad that create massive dominance within the game. Now, I don't know who spoke to him, but he started including them in the starting 11 and they've started getting results, which tells me if Tuchel is going to be setting up that way with the defensive discipline that he has as a coach and the kind of attacking threat that they have, because unlike Chelsea when Tuchel was there, they didn't have that much of an attacking prowess to score that many goals, and so he was relying on wing backs to create a lot of chances. Now he has proper attackers. Harry Kane is there, Musiala is there. You have Leroy Sané, you have Serge Gnabry, you have Kingsley Coman, you have Thomas Muller. This is a proper attacking setup. Choupo-Moting, Matistel. These guys would score the goals. They won't be like the Chelsea team who would score one and sit back and be watching you. And so I do not think Arsenal really would have it lightly within this game. And I don't know. I don't give Arsenal any chance in this time. Maybe someday people will pick this video and roast me about it. I don't care. I don't
I
have any
mean,
positive feelings about
I
Arsenal.
mean, you were the last hope for Arsenal in terms of defending them, but you've just spent 5 minutes just decimating them, showing why they were. But I just have 3 points I want to make.
Yeah,
The first is where these clubs are in terms
yeah,
of not just pedigree, but in terms of where they are with aura, things like that.
yeah,
I think one, you look at the celebrations, which has been a huge topic. And by the way, I have an opinion on it. I think they are right to celebrate any way they can, but people
yeah,
are also right to make implications from that. It
yeah,
does mean that these guys were extremely excited to have got over the round of 16 Ks because like that's where
yeah,
they lost to Bayern and amongst a series of horrible results. So just mentally,
but
there's a way that thing affects you, like the feeling of
yeah,
satisfaction, the feeling of you have
I've,
achieved.
I've achieved it.
Yes, exactly. So I think that in itself can reduce the motivation a bit in terms of just being able to find motivation because they used a lot of that to go against Porto and to have gone
Yeah,
120 minutes. And now you have people like louding them up, you've done well, things like that. They're not a team that is expected to win the Champions League, but people just expect them to go far. People just expect them to compete. So Arteta has a job on his hands to convince the squad that they need to beat Bayern Munich. I think a lot of their fans are saying, yeah, let's have a go at them. And it just tells you the mentality of where the squad is.
yeah,
With the fact that there's a lack of experience within the team in terms of Champions League
yeah,
experience. Who Havertz, Jorginho, just a couple of guys. Majority of the squad does not have Champions League experience. Believe you
yeah,
me, like we saw the penalties Inter took with Atletico, nerves count. If your nerves get the better of you, you most likely
yeah,
won't much as you want to. On the other hand, with Bayern, there's high expectations. One, they are no longer
yeah,
competing for the league, so
yeah,
Champions League is all they have. And two, what we've seen them struggle with over the last 2 seasons is just the departure of Lewandowski, and they now have
yeah.
Harry Kane, too, which means that they
Hurricane.
will score goals. Yeah, and I think for the first time, you have a team that most likely will dominate Arsenal in the two legs. So far in the
Yeah.
Champions League, they've not
They've
had
not
to.
been tested at all.
Yes, they've not been
They've not
tested.
been tested at all.
That being said, I think there is opportunity for Arsenal, and that's the second thing I wanted to come to because when a team
Yeah,
is maturing, you need to hit certain landmarks. Like you can't be. And I mean, it's a debate podcast, so I'll use that as a reference. You can't
yeah,
be the best debater if you don't beat the best guys. So
yeah,
we
exactly.
had a lot of discussions about people who did just don't want the big guys to come to tournaments, things like that. We earned our
Yeah,
names because we went toe to toe with the big guys and we proved our
exactly.
worth. And I feel like that is maybe where they can find the opportunity and the motivation to do this. Because I remember Liverpool a couple of years back when they met Bayern Munich, they scored them 3-1. And it was because
Yeah,
this Liverpool side was buzzing. People were talking about the front three, but Bayern Munich was a challenger, stalwart, the bulwark within like the Champions League. And Liverpool beating them just gave them the mark of okay, now you're a serious team. So if
yeah.
Arsenal wants any, because the problem right now is no one takes Arsenal seriously. They are a laughing
I
stock.
was saying
So
this the other time.
yeah.
It's that
So if
even until now, nobody can convince themselves that Arsenal is that threatening.
Yeah.
because they've not
So
done it yet. They've still not
yeah,
proven it yet.
you need to do it. You need to do it. And if you are seen celebrating like that against Porto, people will just it's just associated with a small club mentality. Like
Yeah,
you will not like yeah, you will not see a lot of teams do that. You will not see Bayern like of course celebrate. No one is stopping you.
because
But the kind of
the truth
celebration,
is, and I'm going to say this, if there are some other teams, the only reason why, for instance, the narrative around Arsenal winning the way they won against Porto is because it's they are performing well.
mm,
Very honest, if it was a struggling team in the EPL that struggled like that against Porto and had to go to penalties to win, the narrative in the media would have been different. It would have been that, well, they
yeah,
struggled against the Porto, they should have put this tie to bed,
yeah.
they struggled and
In
they've
the
won,
media
but they
love.
should have about it. Yeah, currently the media is on Ateta's side, right? Obviously because he's done amazing work and he's playing wonderful football. And so I just think that the media perception should not take away the fact that they struggled against Porto.
Yeah,
And so you don't go into Bayern Munich. Porto would get chances and struggle. You don't go into a Bayern Munich game and think that you are going to be getting those. And like you said, Arsenal hasn't been really tested, and Arsenal isn't playing with an out and out striker. They don't have a prolific forward like you would need in these lethal games. Because
yeah,
when people say that it took Haaland to get City the treble or to get City the Champions League. It's not even just that it took Haaland to score all the goals. It's that it took Haaland to create the threat to pin defenders back enough to give people like Bernardo Silva, Jack
yeah,
Grealish, Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne the spaces they needed to do their things and score some of the goals. And
yeah.
so sometimes you need those factors, and I don't think Arsenal has that right now.
No, not yet. I think that there's a team in there. I think if they continue on this trajectory in two, three
There's
years,
one more step to unlock before
yeah,
they
yeah, that's what it feels like. Because Man City had the same thing, right? Where they were constantly
yeah,
appearing round of 16 quarters until
the same. Yeah,
final. Then after they go to final now, they win. So they'll need that. I think the last point I was going to make is that there's a chance, right? Like there's a chance for Arsenal within this game, but it's going to take them playing the football of their lives, right? And it's going to take Bayern Munich being what they've been,
yeah,
which sometimes has been like a bit inconsistent. I think the fans not being in the stadium at the Emirates won't be a problem, mostly because like these fans put a lot of pressure and expectation on these guys,
yeah.
and sometimes that can be
It probably might be worse for Arsenal actually,
yes,
because then there's no excuse to lose. And
yes,
now, if you lose, it's even worse. The
yes,
implication is worse that you have
pressure.
an entire stadium to yourself and you still lost. Then imagine going to Munich,
Yeah,
right?
and I
So,
think you're right about Tuchel in the sense that I know last season he was beating 3-0 by Man City, but he knows how to get his squad fired for cup games and he knows how
yeah.
to prepare cup
But to be
games.
very honest, I mean, City beat them, but let's not pretend as if that game was a poor performance from Bayern. They matched City toe to toe. They didn't take their chances. They didn't have a prolific forward who
Yeah.
would do that for them.
Yes, yes, that's
And
true.
City took their chances. It was like there was this luck factor that was playing every single situation
Yeah,
into City's hands.
yeah,
Those 50-50 situations that you say they are match deciding, they went in City's favor and they won. And so I don't think, first of all, I don't think Bayern is like that this season. Probably they have more of an edge, but I don't think Arsenal is also at where City was last season, right?
no,
Which doesn't make them the contenders that City are.
no. Plus, I think people don't know this, but Bayern Munich has not had to always play very well to win. Like they've not
Yes,
always had to play
yeah,
like football.
yeah,
Sometimes, yeah, they are in the league, but they are not tearing up the league. But they come to
yeah.
the Champions League, and some of
They
these players,
will.
yeah, the nights they love it. Whilst like you find some of these
And
Arsenal
even for
players,
last season, I had a feeling if Nagelsmann was there, they would have beaten City
well,
because he had the team. He had a perfect run in the group stages. He had the team playing in an Nagelsmann's sack was as shocking as Tuchel's sack from Chelsea, and the problem was he had the team playing. He was so tactically fluid and unpredictable. And at that time, Tuchel has come in, hadn't had enough time to settle, and he had to go in against the best team in the
yeah,
world to play a Champions League clash. So
yeah,
obviously, everything within that clash wasn't in in Bayern's favor. This time around, it's not the same. So you don't. I don't think Arsenal should be looking at that result from the Etihad and then thinking we can do this. No, this is a different animal you are dealing with.
Agree.
Finally, let's talk about probably the most controversial one: City versus Real Madrid. I think Pep will be found out. I don't know your thoughts.
50-50. I think the circumstances around this game is a lot. One thing I know is you can't write off Madrid. I don't know what is in Madrid. You cannot write them off. But I think given City struggles this season, um, it's quite documented what you need to do to beat them. And I think that Real Madrid has the tools. Like, look, Real Madrid has been is very fluid with their attacking in terms of using the pace of Vinicius, Rodrigo, sometimes even Brahim Diaz, using the
Yeah,
technical ability of Bellingham to find pockets of spaces. And City has struggled with that all throughout the season.
yeah,
So I think City would need Rodri fit. That's the first thing. And they would need all the players playing their best football. They would need some of the centre backs from Real Madrid still out injured. And last season, they were able to run rings around Modric and Cruz. They have much, much more athletic players in the
yeah,
midfield now. And Madrid is one of the best counter pressing, like counter attacking teams in the world
yeah,
right now with the pace. And they are also good at being able to pile up behind the box and keep the ball. They're so
yeah,
good at keeping the ball. So I think it's going to be a strong tie. But I tip City slightly because of what they were able to do last season.
yeah.
Because see the way in which they beat Madrid last season. It's not like, would you even say that Madrid team is an improvement on this? Not too sure, maybe apart from Bellingham. So the question now is, will Bellingham be the X factor? Will that be the difference? And I'm not sure if he makes the difference for Real Madrid. But that being said, I'm probably going to regret my words because I never like to bet against Real Madrid.
I mean, for me, I think the very reason why Madrid would beat City is because City beat them last season. And it's a similar feeling I had about City beating them last season was because Madrid beat them the season before. There's this thing about vengeance when it comes to the top teams, and this thing about rage, about not allowing something to happen again. If you look at the manner in which City lost to Madrid, they were obviously not going to allow it to happen again. And
Yeah.
when for Pep Guardiola, who is we know is a very very brilliant manager, but barely speaks in a way that makes him look like he's bragging. For him to DM Rio Ferdinand before the home game against Madrid and then say we'll beat them clearly tells you he was hyped up beyond simply having a UCL clash. He was hyped up to prove a point, to tell you, like the last time you met us, you didn't deserve to beat us. And this time around, come and collect your lashes and go away. And it's going to be same. I think, first of all, there are two things that are going to decide this clash. Who is playing their home game first? Usually, the guy who tends to play the first home game struggles because the final home game, whoever is home puts in
But this time
absolutely everything.
it's City. City is playing home last.
Yeah, City is playing home last, which means when they go to the Bernabeu, they would have to either get a draw or even get a win, which is very, very difficult to do. Secondly, I think this Madrid team, to be very honest, is a different animal beyond the last year's Madrid team. We don't see a lot of personnel change in terms of the squad, but in terms of, first of all, the starting 11, there's a lot of changes within that starting 11. Like you were saying, now Ancelotti is struggling with it, but he's giving Modric more and more of a rest, playing a lot more athletic players within the midfield to the point that even when their defense is out, he still has midfielders, Trameni converted to centre backs, who are playing very, very well and are not losing games, right? They are still on the winning streak and getting the results. They are still top of the table in the La Liga. You also look at that midfield diamond that he's playing and now playing two forwards instead of three, creating a lot of issues with it. Because now what Pep uses to win games is a midfield overload. By the very setup of Madrid, they are already overloading the midfield with Bellingham forming the apex of the diamond. And so the three midfielders, the two eights now are able to sit deep and are able to play around with the DM around Bellingham, forming that diamond. And then Rodrigo and Vinicius are very, very narrow. And those narrow forwards are things that City defenders hate. Kyle Walker was saying he hates a winger who likes to enter the pockets. And that's the very setup of Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo. They don't, when Benzema was playing, was probably when you see them hugging the touchline. This time round, they are in because they are not playing with an out and out nine. So they
Yeah.
are not wide, they are on the edge of the box and finding the pockets. And then you see Bellingham obviously making these late runs into the box and then
Mm.
getting the goals. And so City would have to be dealing with a different animal. City would have to be very, very careful. And this is a team that throughout this season have proven that they are back to one of their best seasons. There is a story, there is a narrative they are forming around them. And I hate Madrid in an emotional state because for them, unlike United, who plummets with emotions, Madrid flies with emotions. They
Yeah.
just pick a game, fly out of it. And I just think I don't see Pep Guardiola beating
I
Ancelotti
mean,
back to back.
that's the.
Yeah,
I mean, we've judged Arsenal based on like their previous game. That's the game against Leipzig. Like, give you any doubts? Because like over both of the legs, Leipzig was the better team, and it was just the case, similar case, that Leipzig players controlled the ball very, very well, and Madrid didn't smell it. Madrid is a team that always like very, very lucky. So it seemed they were lucky on the night, but Leipzig outplayed
I
them,
don't,
and
I don't
I
know if you've if you've seen Madrid play in a lot of games, and if you've watched them this season. Sure, Madrid dominates games, but sometimes their dominating games is not by having the ball. It's just by dictating the play off the ball. So an opposition may have the ball a lot, but they are not creating chances, they are not penetrating, and they are fine to sit off and let you have the ball and play. And that's what Madrid does sometimes. Even in the two clashes that they beat City, City had what insane amounts of possession. They allowed you to play the ball, but they just made sure they were defensively disciplined enough to block it off. And if you look at the game they lost against City at home, it was because sometimes center backs were pulled out of position, they distorted their defensive shape, and then Bernardo Silva pounced in those two goals, and that put the tie to bed. And so it's about if Madrid maintains their defensive discipline, they usually don't win games by having lots of possession, unless they are
yeah,
playing against a team that wants Madrid to have the possession. They are fine having it, which is a really good thing about that team. Because unlike some teams, a team like City, they always want to have the possession. And so
yeah,
if a team takes the game to them, they struggle, right?
yeah,
A team like United, they are very terrible at having the possession. So even against Bournemouth, they want to be on the counter attack because they always want to give the ball to the other person. And that's how come every time they look terrible. Madrid turns up in either situation. You want them to have the ball, they would play because they have technical players who know how to play. You want to keep the ball, fair enough, because they are disciplined enough to sit in a defensive block that lets you have the ball without creating chances. And that's what makes me feel if Madrid is disciplined enough this time round, you can keep the ball. They don't care. They just need that one chance, two chances, and they would finish you off, and that's all.
yeah. I mean, it's a game I would really, really love to see and look forward to.
Yeah,
The fact also that Ancelotti is the man in charge makes it a very, very dicey
yeah,
fixture. But I
yeah.
love to see what Pep has, because like obviously like this season he's been quite short. Like even though he brought in Doku, like he has like players like Nunes, like Kovacic,
Yeah.
they've just not come to the party. They've just not come to the
That's
party.
the thing about Pep's signings. I've always said Pep's signings take time to hit their peak.
Yeah,
Even when he brought in Rodri, the first season of Rodri wasn't great.
yeah, it was
Today
terrible.
we are counting several matches that Rodri has gone without being beaten, and his first season was terrible. And people started saying, why didn't he pick Partey when he went to Atletico Madrid and then he picked Rodri instead? And so some of those conversations, but which made it a little bit of a shaky start for me for Madrid and for Pep because I feel unlike previous seasons where he brought in players but he still has to stop guys and so these guys have time to settle in. Now he
Mm,
doesn't have his top guys to keep the performances up and these guys
mm,
have to settle in much quicker and any new player under Pep takes time to settle in,
yeah,
especially because he's very, very strict at the way he wants you to play to get the
yeah,
best out of the team collectively. And so, yeah, like you're saying, I think maybe he would need a lot of these guys to turn up in these big games. Whereas I think that was where Madrid was last season. And
Yeah,
now they look like they have now integrated the young guys into the team fully.
yeah,
They've now turned up the switch to a properly constructed side. People usually say Ancelotti doesn't play tactical football. And I tell you, then you've not watched this game. He probably doesn't scream on the touchline, but he's very, very tactically brilliant in the way in which he sets up his teams. And for instance, when Bellingham was coming into this team, everybody said Madrid needed a striker, not a
yeah,
midfielder. But he pulled this formation out of the heart, and now Bellingham is one of the most prolific informed players within the world. And so I think it would be very interesting to see the tactical battle between those two
yeah.
managers.
Same here. Same here. I actually look forward to the game.
All right. So for me, if you're asking me for my semi-finalists, I would go for Madrid, Munich, PSG, and Atletico Madrid. And I think that would be one hell of a semi-final clash to be watching. Some of the
Yeah,
teams would just dilute their space if they are allowed to enter the semi-final.
yeah. I'll hate to see Atleti in the final, but I think uh, a PSG Atleti final is more likely. I'll go with a City Bayern semi-final,
Okay.
probably. Yeah,
Okay. Well, I mean, we'll be back to this, but eventually, when the clashes are coming nearer, we would have more information about the teams, their setup, and do some proper tactical analysis about how they like to set up play outs and what their weaknesses have been, and see
yeah.
which sides are going to exploit. Anyway,
Exciting.
yeah. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and see you guys on the next one of the beer panel. Bye, guys.